that is just anything that's already exists in R, you can use, and there's no issues. The other thing that you're allowed to use is a library called tidyverse. And tidyverse is basically one of many libraries, and a library is just basically a collection of other functions and commands that can allow you to do some really, really cool things, right? In R, there's probably hundreds of different libraries that you can use, do different things. Some of them do very similar things. You know, we have different preferences for which ones we prefer, which ones we try to use a little bit more. Tidyverse is one of the more popular ones, especially when it comes to things like data reading and data wrangling and cleaning and stuff. So we're allowing you to use that. So you're allowed to use two. So as part of the tidyverse library, the read CSV function, which everybody here is going to need to use, unless you're using an XLS file, unless you, well, I don't know if you would necessarily use an XLS file, but I think even if you use an XLS file, you would have to load a different library. Read CSV is actually part of tidyverse, and in order to use that function, you would have to use, you would have to call or load the tidyverse library, and you would do that by typing in, let me see if I've got my R script up here. Let's have a look. Oh. So yeah, you would end up doing something like library tidyverse, something like that. Yeah, so you have to call that as part of your script. Excellent. Oh, the other thing to notice is visualization.pdf. You will be briefed on this, but your visualization.pdf has to be lowercase. Everything that you submit has to be lowercase. Your research_question.yaml file has to be lowercase. And your data sets are probably going to be lowercase. And if they're not, I would encourage you to save them as lowercase.
Sorry, Emmy. It would be good to note that before you use the library tidyverse, they must install the package of the tidyverse.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, absolutely. You have to install that package as well, if it's not already installed. But as we'll see later, don't try to force installs on your R script. We've had a few groups try to do this in the past. So yeah, as Parisa said, tidyverse, you would have to install it. You should get the instructions for that in some parts during the lab. If not, it is a really easy. Let me see if I can. Oh, let me just get a. If I can just get a new file. It would just be a install. Is it packages or library? Yeah. Oh, and then it would be tidyverse. And when you run that for the first time, oh, actually, I think it might be. I can never remember which order it is in.
Yes, it should be in double quote.
Yeah, and then when you load the library, you don't have to do it in quotes. Okay, cool. So install it. Don't have the install.library as part. Sorry, the install.packages as part of your script. So where were we? Okay, so this one's actually hard to see from here because it's not obvious, but I'll show you. Here, everything probably looks about right, except for the fact that when it came to reading their reading the CSV file or their R script after we pulled from their Bitbucket repository, we found that they did not push their CSV file. Okay, so this is really important. You will download your CSV file to your local directory, to your local computer, and it will work. Your R script will work because it is pointing to a local file. However, when you push all of your files, when you push your R script to your repository, your group's repository, you have to push your CSV file as well. Because if you don't, what you're going to end up with is, well, when we pull, we're going to have, well, these are the contents of the repository that John had pulled in this particular instance. And you can see everything is there apart from the CSV file. So when John tries to run this, or anybody else tries to run this script on their file, on their computer, this CSV file doesn't exist, which means everything that you try to do with this file is not going to work. Okay. Next one. So again, this is the script. This is the script file. These are the contents of the script file. This is line 1 all the way down to line, I guess, 7 or 8. Can anybody see what is going on with this, these particular lines? Anybody? Well, I'll tell you, they all start with the greater than sign, and R doesn't know how to handle these. The reason this script has got these lines, these greater than signs at the start of these lines, is probably because whoever submitted this code would have just copied from, let me see if I can go back to my R script, would have just copied from their console into their script, and they would have copied along the greater than signs as well. Exactly, Sarabi, that's exactly right, yeah? When you put it into your script, you cannot have these because R's not going to know what to do with them, yeah? So my advice is write your script in, well, write your main block of code in your script. If you ever need to test things, or, just, you do like a view.df or something, that's fine. You can do it in here, but don't write your entire script in your console, copy it, and then put it into your script, because that's not going to work. Yeah, you're much better off just writing it in your script than using this to test things or seeing outputs or whatever it is you might be using the console for, rather than writing your script line by line and then copying everything. Yeah, excellent. 7. Now this one's a bit tricky. I'll use this as an example, but actually there's a much bigger example at play here. So the answer here is there is an issue with the, let's have a look here. So there'll be an issue here with the summarize function. Oh, let's go back. With the summarize function, I've only ever come across this error a couple of times, and I can't remember. I mean, on my own personal projects, and I don't think I ever managed to figure out why this happened. I think it has something to do with the fact that group by drops one of the cells. Effectively, essentially, there has been a semantic error on this R script that would have caused, I mean, this error would have been obvious in not only the person who ran the script initially, but for anybody else who run this script in their group. So if these kind of errors pop up locally, they are almost certainly, going to pop up when we run them, when you submit them. Yeah, so if you get these kind of errors and they've been submitted, what that tells us is that has not been picked up, that's not been addressed, that it hasn't gone through that review process that we try to encourage. So if you remember from like the Trello tutorials that we had a few weeks ago, when you set up Trello, one of those columns was a review column. And we really, really, really want to encourage you to use that review column properly. So when your cards go into that review column, these kind of errors, these semantic errors, these syntactical errors, these data loading errors, all of these things should be picked up and identified before you submit. Because if you get them, like it's not gonna get fixed after you submit it. It's just gonna like the problem is just gonna compound. At the very least, it's going to be the same. At worst, it's going to throw even more errors up on our side. Yeah. So again, this is all about telling you to, if you have errors, address them, fix them. Don't think that they're going to get solved on a different machine. Don't think that, it's just your machine that's doing something and your friend's machine is going to be fine. No, it needs to be consistent for everybody. Yeah. Number 6. Okay, so this is an interesting one because I have seen this error many, many times. There's a few people in this group, I think, who are probably pretty good with R. So I wonder if anybody can see what the error might be here. Give you 30 seconds or so. Anybody? So one clue is that you have to remember that you will be working. So Robbie, it'll be way before while up. In fact, yeah, that's not an error. So Rafi, it's on that same line. Muhammad Awais has got it exactly right. The file name is local. Okay, so this read.csv file here is pointing to a local file name, and a local file name means that it's pointing to the absolute directory of that one student's, that one person's PC. Yeah. So we have C users, Holly working, 7com, blah, 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 and there'll be like a CSV file at the end of this. This line here is going to look at this exact directory as it is been typed out to try and find the CSV file. That's going to work on one person's computer, but it's not going to work on your group mates' computers, because unless their name is also the same as yours, so Harley working, unless they have this exact same file structure, unless all of this is exactly the same for, I can't imagine it will be, it's not going to work. R is going to say, well, I'm looking in this folder, but this folder doesn't exist. This directory doesn't exist. They don't know what they're looking for. So rather, that file should be imported and not use absolute path. Yeah, you can import it that way. My advice would be to set your working directory to the folder that your R script is going to be in. And also, use that as your working directory, and also have your R script and your CSV file in the same directory. And then here, what you would do is just put the name of the CSV file as we have seen here and as we have seen here. Yeah. So, so Robbie, yeah, it should be the directory path, the Git repository. I wouldn't even bother with the path. The file name is fine as long as your working directory is set to the directory with your R script. Just supplying the CSV file name is going to be enough. Yeah. And if everybody in your group does the same thing, it will be absolutely fine, because when we pull it, what we're looking for is the R script to point to your local, to the same directory. Sorry, I'll say it again. The R script is going to assume that the working directory is that same directory that the R script is in, and the CSV file needs to be in that same folder. Yeah. So no need to make things exactly. So Rafa said exactly the same thing. Yeah. So the only thing I would say is on your when you first initialize R, and if you've not done it yet, what you might need to do if you import or something, you might need to navigate to your working directory. And for this project, you might need to set as your working directory, which you can do that way, or you could even do set W. I don't particularly like that way. You could just set working directory, and then you can probably see in this folder here on the right hand side, I have my R script and my CSV file in the same folder. So actually I can come back into here. So when I am using the name of a file name, the CSV file is just pointing to the local directory. I don't have to tell it all of this because it knows that it's looking in the directory that we're working in. Yeah. So where were we? Yeah. So set your working directory to that folder and then just use the name of the CSV file. Okay. This is, well, it's not a hard one because I'll give you the answer in a second, but what I will say is for people who are not particularly well versed in R, who are not experienced with R, this is going to seem like a really silly, stupid problem or an error. But one thing that I need to remind everybody, and I need to say this time and time again, R, when it comes to file names, is case sensitive. And case sensitive means that if you put a capital letter here, it's going to look for this exact file name with the capital letter. And if you have anything else that might be spelt the same, but is a different set of capital letters or lowercase, for instance, it's not going to read that file. So in this particular instance, this group has tried to read diabetes.csv, which is technically fine. Okay, so diabetes.csv is actually in their directory, but they've used a capital D, but their CSV file has a lowercase d. This sounds like a really, really silly issue, but we need to be really mindful that if we have lowercase, we need to use lowercase in our script. Actually, I would encourage all of your files, when you submit them. So your research underscore question should be a YAML file. Your visualization.pdf, your CSV file, keep them all lowercase. Be consistent with all of those, especially with your visualization research question and your visualization.r, because we are looking for lowercase versions of those. That's really, really important. Okay, so this one actually feeds into, so actually Ralph has asked why there are additional comma. Well, yeah, I don't know, that probably wouldn't have run anyway. That looks like it might be an error. Again, these are student submissions, so they're not going to be perfect. I don't know if that would run actually. No, I don't think it would. You might get an error. Anyway, so these are actually real student submissions. So, if there are errors, these are very representative of real errors that have occurred. Okay, the error here actually feeds into something that I said earlier in this tutorial. And we don't have to look too far for it. Does anybody have any ideas what might be going on here? Okay, so I'll tell you. So if you remember, loading libraries, exactly. So if you remember what we spoke about right at the beginning, there are two things you can use in your scripts: base R and tidyverse. Like I said, and Paris said, you would install the tidyverse library, and then you would run the or you would load the library tidyverse once it's installed. There are many libraries that you can actually use theoretically in R. And actually, as much as I would encourage everybody to go out, use Google. You know, if you come across any errors, any issues, or you're trying to figure out how to do things, by all means, use Google to try and find solutions, to try and find answers to some of the common problems that you might come across. That's absolutely fine. Everybody does that, myself included. The limitation there is there will always be solutions, and oftentimes they will ask you to use functions that come from other libraries in order to work around things, you know, maybe use different functions that might make things a little bit easier. Nothing that we ask you to do on this particular module will require anything other than tidyverse or base R. So if you come across solutions or advice or help online that asks you to use functions or load from other libraries, my advice is to ignore that and try and find a different answer, a different solution, because you're not going to be allowed to load anything other than tidyverse. Yeah. Again, please don't do that, because that will be an instant fail. This is very similar, actually. So this actually feeds straight into this number 3, and I've seen this a couple of times in previous years. And again, we don't have to look too far to see what's going on here. Yeah, library again, except for this time, this group has tried to get around it. This group has said, well, we've given the instructions of saying, you know, tidyverse is only tidyverse is going to be installed and base R is only going to be installed on the test machine. And this group has decided that one way they might get around it is by adding the install.packages onto their script so that it installs on the test machine, and then they can load it. It's going to be the same problem. We're not going to allow it. Yeah. So if you're trying to get around it by putting in install packages, thinking that you can install packages on the test machine, it's going to result in a fail. So please, we will check for that. So please don't do that. Like I said, everything that we are asking you to do can be done in tidyverse. Yeah. And you don't even have to stretch tidyverse too far to get the functionality that we're looking for. Yeah. Nice. Oh, I might have given the answer away then. So again, this is the entire script from start to finish. And it's probably hard to say, well, actually, if I said to you, this is the entire script, they've basically tried to create a data frame from a data set that doesn't exist. Okay. Before you do anything, this needs to be read and needs to be initialized as dataset 3 final. So what we would expect to see here is something like, well, before they use data frame, I would expect to see something like, read.csv or read._csv, and then the name of the dataset, CSV. Actually, let's go back. So this might be dataset 3 final, and then you would do dataset 3. Yeah, that hasn't been loaded in. So when it comes to working with this dataset, R doesn't know what's going on, because it's like, well, we don't know what this object is because there's nothing that's been, but it's not been created, but I think also nothing's been loaded into it. Yeah. So before you do anything, you want to make sure that your object, your data frame, your table, data 3 final actually has some data in it. Okay, last one. The number one reason, I've seen this so many times. The number one reason groups fail the visualization deliverable. So the clue is in the name of the visualization deliverable, and this is the contents of the Bitbucket repository. So why would this particular group fail the visualization deliverable if this is the contents of their Bitbucket repository? Anybody? Well, where's the visualization.r file, right? Yeah. So Abdul Muiz sort of said a similar thing. There is no, so everything is there. They have the data set, they've got the research question.txt file, that's fine, or the YAML files, it should have been, but there's no visualization.r. That might have been on their local machine. They might have created it. It might have been the best script that we're ever going to come across, and it might have been absolutely perfect. And for everything else being considered, that might have scored 100%. But if it's not in your Bitbucket repository, we're not going to be able to mark it. Yeah, we've seen this many times, many times. So when you do a git push, you commit it, you push it, make sure that it is on your Bitbucket repository. Make sure that it's been committed and pushed properly. Make sure that, like, once you do it, that your group members actually pull that repository as well, so they can see it. And you can log on to Bitbucket and actually see what the commits look like and make sure that the file is actually there. Yeah. We've seen that so many times, and I really don't want people to fail because they forgot to push the file that they were supposed to push. Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, all of these errors are easily detected using R script and actually utilizing the fact that you have 5 people in your group or 4 people in the group, or however many people you have in your group. If one person is working on on the code, push it, ask your group mates to pull it, make sure that they can see all of the changes that you've made, all of the files that you intend on submitting and publishing, make sure that they are all there. Yeah, it's much, much easier to get 3, 4, 5 sets of eyes on your repository as you're making changes than it is, for us to fail you and then you to say, oh, well, actually it worked, or I thought I'd push something, and well, we're only going to be able to pull what you have actually pushed and what we can verify that is there. Yeah. If you don't commit properly, if you don't push properly, if it's not in your Bitbucket repository at the deadline, once you've submitted everything, we're not going to be able to pull it. You're not going to get marks for it. So please, please, please make sure that you don't do loads of hard work and then forget to submit it to your, push it. Pushing it at this point is effectively like your submission. So you need to make sure that your submission is there in time. Yeah. To make sure, like I said, you can have your group members copy, pull that repository. You can also clone it into a different directory on your local machine and make sure that all the required information is there as well. Yeah. When it comes to submitting, when it comes to working through your script, and before you submit, I would like everybody to go through this checklist and some of the other things as well that you will pick up on. Go through this checklist. Please make sure that you don't make any of these mistakes. Yeah, just go through it, say, okay, well, we've addressed this one, we've addressed this one, we've addressed this one, everything, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and hopefully, as long as you've done the work and it's there, you will get marked for it. But if you've done the work and it's not there, unfortunately, you're going to get 0. And then there's nothing we can do about that. It's just as good as missing a deadline. Like, that is how you have to think about it. If the work is not there, you're going to get 0 for it. If the script does not run, you're going to get 0 for it. We're not going to manually go into your scripts and see what you have done. The script is going to be run from command line, and you need to make sure that it works and you've tested it from your command line as well. Okay, any questions? No. No, I don't see any raised hands. Well, have a quick look. Okay then. Well, how many the minimum number of rows? There is no minimum, but I would imagine that anything that is done, or well, anything that's submitted to yeah, data world is data world. Anything that's submitted to data world should be comprehensive enough. You should be fine. I can't tell you how many minimum number of rows. You know, a couple of hundred, I guess, would be sufficient for you to at least. Well, that's not strictly true. It's not strictly true. So much of it depends on what your research question is and what variables you're looking at and whether you're going to be aggregating stuff. I'll say this as a general catch-all. Yeah, 1,200 rows is enough. That's more than enough. Cool. Okay then. I imagine there might be some groups that are probably need to prepare to go and present at some point this afternoon. So we can leave it there. I hope that was at least partially helpful. Like I said, please don't make these mistakes. I really don't want to see these mistakes from this group. Yeah, before you submit, go back and check these slides and address all of these things one by one, and you should be okay. Cool. Right, guys. Well, I'll either see you guys tomorrow if you're in the labs tomorrow, or next week in these tutorials. Cool.
Thank you very much. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Bye.